Welcome to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast, a show about innovations, technology, and leaders in the recruitment industry. Brought to you by TalkPush, the leading recruitment automation platform.
Hello, and welcome back to the Recruitment Hackers Podcast. Today, I'd like to welcome on the show Manjuri Sinha. Manjuri is the head of talent acquisition for technology for the OLX Group. Thanks for joining, Manjuri.
Thank you, Max. Happy to be here.
Manjuri is dialing in from Berlin, one of my favorite cities in the world. And over the last few years, Berlin has become a tech hub, certainly in the startup space, but I think also beyond, which is how the OLX Group ended up setting up shop in Berlin, you were telling me?
Absolutely, Max. So I think this was pretty much the reason, the talent market. So let me also give a little bit of context on what OLX is. We're a classifieds platform. For my lovely friends in Germany, you can maybe relate to it with eBay Kleinanzeigen. That's something for the emerging markets. So we have classifieds for resale of cars, resale of anything. If you talk to someone in Poland, they literally tell you that from their phone to their cupboards, to their cars, to their apartments, they have sold or purchased on OLX platforms. Of course, we have different brands that front end us, but that's what OLX is. We are across 30 countries, and being in Berlin is definitely due to the tech talent market that we have, and Berlin is our OLX Europe's tech hub. And in terms of usage, we pretty much, have more than 20 brands. Also, we have around 300 million active users, as well as if you see the number of people is 10,000 plus strong employee strength. And of course, we're a part of the overall Prosus Group, which is one of the biggest investment companies in the world.
I imagine that building marketplaces and all of these emerging markets means you need to have teams in everywhere, all around the globe, right? And that you want to have designers, product managers, marketers living in each of the markets you serve. Is that part of your remit, or you're purely focused on the tech, which is more centralized perhaps?
Yeah, so my remit is product, data, and technology. So yes, all what you mentioned actually falls in that bucket. So product designers, UX researchers, when I say technology, it's engineering, and data is everything to do with data science, data analytics, as well as data engineering. So this is the world, and this is the gamut. Of course, we also have the offline part of the business where we have, car inspectors and people who really look at when you do the inspection of a car before it's resold, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another world, warehouses, car inspectors, et cetera. So yes, and we do need to have presence in our markets for sure. So even our tech hubs are distributed accordingly, Max. So we are of course, we have a huge presence in Poland, in Portugal, which are bigger markets as well. Now we have stepped up on our building up of a tech hub in Romania and Ukraine. That's what we are doing at the moment, super busy. India is a major tech hub. In the northern part of the country, we have an office as well. And then we have Latin America, where we have tech teams based in Colombia, Mexico, and Argentina.
So do you find that hiring managers have moved past the reflex, the habit of associating a job with a location, and that now it's, they're not thinking that way? Or, how fast are we moving in the other direction where everybody's remote and you can hire anywhere? Is it moving fast and as fast as you'd like? Or maybe you prefer to go back to localized hubs? What's your position on this? Hire anywhere or hire somewhere?
I would still say, so there were two parts to your question, Max. One is how do we see hiring managers actually reacting to this? I think for hiring managers, they need that seat to be filled. That's one of the basic, really important things for them. Yes, they do feel that there should be some proximity to their teams. However, the understanding with most technology teams that we are hearing is either we go remote first. That means that you don't have a partial thing that you have 10 people sitting in the same room in a meeting room, and you have another 10 people sitting in different blocks, because that's what is not good for the culture. So if you have a remote first team, everybody should be remote. And if you come together for a workshop, then you commute for that workshop. But you shouldn't be, divided half and half. The second aspect that you asked about hiring anywhere. Hiring anywhere is a wish and a luxury, because what we have not been able to kind of crack, and I think it's the same with all organizations, is insurance, taxation, and so on and so forth. So we do stay close to our hubs. We do hire remote in Poland, we hire remote in Romania, we hire remote in Portugal. But because we have hubs in those countries, we can, basis our paperwork, etc. So I think that's one of the challenges for sure. We see the demands. I mean, I was looking at a report just yesterday from this organization called Talent International, and they were talking about this. I think the second most important point that all of their, survey respondents talked about in changing jobs, what will they consider, is flexibility. And this flexibility is around whether they can work remote, whether they can work from home, or they can work from anywhere. So one was the pandemic push. And I think the second aspect will be the candidates demanding this also going forward, especially for the tech market, because that's a candidate driven market. So we would have to look at flexibility and hybrid ways of working. That is definitely here to stay. You might have organizations saying, hey, 3 days come to office, 2 days work from home. I heard yesterday Revolut has given a 2 months option to all employees, saying that 2 months in a year you can work from anywhere. So companies are working out different ways of keeping their folks happy and keeping their ways of working flexible. And that's the way to go. That's what we will see in the future.
It's moving slower than I anticipated, really. I mean, we've been work from anywhere for pre-crisis.
Yeah.
And I thought that by now everybody would be like, this is it. I love it. Yeah, I guess people with this news cycle are also a little bit tired and would like to just kind of turn the page. And if that means going to the office, they'll do it. I found myself actually reminiscing and thinking, wow, I really miss commuting, because commuting was the time when I would switch off from one world to the next. But I've learned how to commute while staying indoors.
Yeah, Matt, but you made a very, very correct point, right? We are not what is happening right now, right? I'm sitting at my living room and at my dining table, you see a fake background behind me, but this is where I am. This is not working from home. So this is the pandemic push of making me stay at home, right? That's a very different thing. I don't get to meet those 10 friends that I would love to for the after works drinks. But in the real world, post-pandemic world, working from home will be different. That's what I can relate to when I was working with Accenture way back. We used to work from home a lot because of the model. I had colleagues distributed all across the world. So if I had to commute to office, which would be 2 hours in a car in India, I would rather work from home. And it would suffice because everybody was kind of, co-located in different countries, et cetera, et cetera. But that was working from home. You would work through the day and yet meet your colleagues maybe for after work drinks. So the socializing is there. Also in setups where you have children, your children are going to the kindergartens, your children are going to school. So they're not all at home. This situation is not working from home. So it's a very different situation that we're in a lot of countries, as you pointed out.
Yeah. Well, how is it different? It's just because it's forced, whereas before it felt like an option?
No, because you had a human interaction, and what I crave at the moment is, kind of going back to office and having those conversations while filling my coffee mug, etc. Because I don't have other human interactions, right? Based on the rule, I can only meet one person, another household, etc. So I'm not having those social interactions, and that's why it's a little different. So we'll see.
I imagine that part of the job that we were talking about, which is influencing the job description, influencing the job, which is an expansion of the traditional job of recruiters and talent acquisition, where traditionally you would think the hiring manager describes bullet point by bullet point what they want, all the keywords, and off you go. That's your spec sheet. Go to work. Come back to me when you've got 10 resumes or 20 or 100. And it's a bit of a one-sided dialogue. And you're trying to move it in the other way. You're trying to say, we're going to change the type of profiles that we're hiring. We're going to change where we're sourcing them from. That job, that part of the work has become much harder now, that you can't force somebody into a coffee break or a longer conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, I think the rapport building, especially, I mean, if I, again, take an example here for myself, I joined OLX in 2019, December. 4 months is when I got to literally travel around the world and meet my team as well as meet my stakeholders. But post that, everything is on Zoom. Everything is on, calls, etc. So the rapport building, you don't have that anyways, when I'm on video, there is a bit of conscious feeling and so on and so forth, right? But you have to work with it and make do with it. It is what it is. And that's a challenge for sure. The influencing part and building that relationship, building that trust, it takes a bit more time than it would in a face-to-face communication.
Takes a bit more time. Okay. And can you tell me more about I'm not going to say the mistakes, but the inherent bias that you've managed to eliminate in some of those job descriptions or some of those job specifications? How have you and your team have influenced the direction for OLX, where they were going to hire a certain type of people and you were able to change their perception? Can you walk us through an example and some tools that you use?
Yeah, absolutely, Max. I think that's a very good question. And it is an extension of what I was saying, right? It's difficult to build those relationships on call, and that's where data helps you. If you make your story along with, validating it with data, that really helps you. And that's the example that I like to take. So it is definitely a collective drive. And for OLX, when we see hiring is a problem for everybody, so it's an ownership for everyone. So if I'm partnering with my engineering leadership person, it's similar ownership that we have. So that's one, the collaboration is very important. Second, I think the things that I've learned through my experience, and this is not just OLX, is many a times as in a TA function, we take the plans as is. We are, we are the team that comes after the workforce planning activity happens. So you take a whole load of role and saying that, okay, these 200, 300, depending on the organization, or maybe 700,000 people have to be hired by so-and-so date in these locations. And then you have to chase something which has been planned without your consent, which has been planned without your inputs, et cetera, et cetera. This is one of the biggest mistakes most TA professionals and TA teams also make. And also not saying no, or also not going back and saying that, okay, this is maybe something that we need to relook at. An example would be, we did have a situation where we were, kind of struggling to hire talented folks in Lisbon as such on site. And this is where we sat down. First of all, we looked at LinkedIn Insights. We looked at there was definitely, when you're hiring, your recruiters start getting a hunch. As a recruiter, you hear from candidates, how is the market looking like, etc. And numbers that we wanted to hire, we needed people coming from really good product companies as well. And of course, if I'm sitting in the Berlin markets, it's a very different scene, but the Lisbon market is still maturing and getting there. You have a lot of services companies, but the product companies are yet to mature with their seniority, etc. So yeah, we couldn't really relocate a lot of people, but we did have to hire and so on and so forth. So we got the data. What does the market say? How has the market gone, responded in the last 2-3 years? We looked at other reports from local providers, which also talked about the salary increases, which are, on the lines of 18%, 25%, and 35% in the market.
In Portugal?
In Portugal, for certain.
It's very, very hot destination.
It is. It's absolutely. I saw a similar, similar trend when we had gone in with our Zalando office in Lisbon and had to actually close it down after some point of time. So that was there. Okay, I can talk about hunch, I can talk about experience, and so on and so forth. So we collated all the data and said that this is what the data tells us. And it actually tells us that there's excellent talent sitting in Porto. There is talent sitting in Coimbra. If we can go remote in Portugal, we can hire all these people. We can bring them into the pipeline. We can see a bigger pool of talent, and we can still hire in Portugal. And this is the discussion that we had with our engineering leadership team. And they were also very upbeat because they actually saw the data. This was not the time when we were talking about our hunches and experiences. We were actually showing data that if we are looking only at Lisbon, this is our talent pool. This is already what we've sourced. So what next, right? And then we also talked about, okay, let's look at the other part. One is remote. Second is, let's start hiring trainees and grow them from there if we don't have a lot of product companies, etc. And
you come from the BPO sector, Manjuri, and you have also that background where you've seen this industry, which went from tier 1 cities to tier 2 cities to tier 3 cities, and now anywhere, applied for, let's say, the more high volume environments. And now you're saying, especially with this remote work or work from home situation, that flexibility that is now global, everybody should take another look at those second and third tier cities, even if you're hiring for more professional level hires, more experienced hires.
Absolutely. There's definite potential. There are a lot of, people that we've kind of maybe overlooked previously with the talent. And this also helps us in max increasing diversity. We've seen situations where everything goes, I mean, it definitely goes beyond binary gender. But if I just take example of binary gender as well, we've seen situations where women don't move a lot, right? Because they have responsibilities and they would rather move countries for their spouse, etc. Now, if we say that, hey, move your life from Porto to Lisbon, that might be tough. But if we tell her that you can stay in Porto and work for us remote, I mean, that's one of the best things again. So even your diversity aspect, how you can make your pipeline diverse, that also gets pushed if we can look at more markets, tier one, tier two. I mean, those stuff, right? I know where it is coming from. It's mostly how we do in India, look at tier one, tier two, tier three kind of a thing.
Yeah, you don't want to use that language in Portugal. You're going to start a civil war. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I know you can relate to that. But yeah, we used to have, even back in the days with emphasis with the BPO sector, our voice processes would be front-ended from tier one cities, but our non-voice processes were also supported. We used to have a lot of people moving in from different cities there in Maharashtra and coming to Pune and really changing, cities, etc. So.
Yeah, in a way, if you're hiring for a sales job or a voice job, in the customer care world, you want to have that hungry young person that moves to the big city. But if you're hiring someone technical who works on more long tasks and can work in isolation, maybe that person is less likely to move out of, that birthplace. Or like you said, some demographics could also be less mobile than others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think they've given me and probably anyone who's listening some ideas on, let's look a little bit broader into those cities we haven't looked at for a while. So that's a really great takeaway. And one question that I like to ask is you, Manjuri, to go back to a hiring mistake that you made for your team or for your customers. About that hiring mistake and tell us what you've learned from it.
So I would say this is actually for my own team. A couple of years ago, I did make a hiring mistake. I would say I was about to make a hiring mistake. How? And I kept on doing that by not hiring certain people. So I had this, this was a bias for a very long term. I used to nurture this bias of, hey, you have to, also maybe it was conscious, unconscious, personal bias because I had done a lot or kind of strived a lot to get my MBA, etc. So when I was looking to hire for a particular role for my team, I was looking at the qualifications. I was looking at the degrees that the person had accomplished and so on and so forth. And I was actually prioritizing candidates in that pipeline who came with an MBA degree or came with a higher degree of master's, etc. And I was overlooking certain people. Whereas when I came back and realized that, okay, I've interviewed maybe more than 24 people, but somehow they don't, on the functional side, still didn't come close to what we were looking at. And finally, we were slightly about to make a mistake, and I was about to make a mistake in maybe hiring someone. I don't know whether that would have been a mistake, but then I looked into my own team, existing team, and then I saw people who were necessarily did not have those degrees, but they were exceptional performers. They were exceptional team players. They were people who would go beyond. They were people, like you said, they were hungry to learn. And then I started scaling back. Then I looked at, okay, the resumes that I had not selected, shortlisted, maybe those are the resumes that I would pick up. And then the person that I hired, she was amazing. And that was a learning for me. And I also took that learning after that, even in my conversations with hiring managers, was that let's not reduce our talent pool by putting 4 or 5 degrees requirements and qualifications, because they not always indicate that this person will be the highest performer in the team.
Yeah.
That's definitely a learning that I've had. And I also
there's 2 lessons there, right? One with the inflation of the requirements, and the second one with look within the team, and you were able to create some internal mobility.
Exactly. That's definitely, Max, for sure.
Great. And well, it's been a pleasure. I have tons of more questions, but we'll do it another time. Manjuri, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Max. I really enjoyed this.
That was Manjuri Sinha from OLX, reminding us that if you don't have to come into the office every day, if socializing with your teammates can be summed up to gathering once a week or so, or once a month, perhaps it's time to expand the radius of your search and to go look outside of those cities where your offices are and start looking at commuting times that are 2 or 3 hours long, because that's just a once in a week or once in a month occasion. Hope you enjoyed the interview. I certainly did. And I invite you to follow us for more and share with friends.